to talk about how to integrate culture during a merger or acquisition. And I know for any of you on the webinar who are dealing with a merger or acquisition or about to go through it and have gone through it, how to integrate culture can really be an important issue to consider. We're going to talk about 3 learning objectives today. We'll start with the basic foundation of understanding the definition of culture and certainly the role that cultural integration plays in your organization's successful merger or acquisition. We'll discuss some of the key principles to assessing, influencing, and designing culture, and all 3 of those steps are really important. And then finally, we'll review a 5-step process for successfully integrating culture during our merger or acquisition, or really any significant change. So although we'll be talking specifically about mergers today, a lot of what we'll talk about you can apply to any time your organization is going through a significant change that's going to shift and change your culture, or one that you realize is going to ask your culture to fluctuate or change in some particular way. So principles we talk about today you can apply in several different ways throughout your organizational lifespan. First, we'll talk about the definition of culture and its role in organizational success. Let's start with a couple of different definitions here. And we hear so many different definitions of culture. These are 2 that I particularly like. One is that culture is the beliefs and assumptions about what our organization expects or values. So an example of that could be that your organization really expects people to work a lot of hours, let's say. Part of the culture is to be very hardworking, and to be very hardworking by putting in a lot of hours, by being available on email and things like that. So someone might have a belief or assumption that if I don't follow your cultural norms about spending a lot of time working and being available to email 24 hours a day, that I might be viewed as not putting in my time. I might be viewed as not producing enough. And that might be true or not true. But someone might hold a belief or assumption about the organizational culture and then adhere to that because they don't want to be perceived as less than hardworking and productive. Another definition of culture is it's what we learn through interacting, solving problems, and making decisions together. And the idea there is that culture forms whether we want it to or not. Culture will always be forming. And so one of the ways it does form, for better or worse, depending on what's happening, is that when a group of people, whether it's a small startup, so it's a team, or it's a much larger organization with teams and divisions and units and subsets and everything else, is that the culture, people within the culture learn and the culture evolves as they interact, they solve problems together, they're making decisions, they communicate with each other, they relate to each other. So as they, in many, many different ways, interact with each other, their culture forms and it evolves. So it's not it's the iceberg, not the tip. One of the things that we often see in articles and talks about culture is that it's the way we say we get things done. Everything above the water there, vision, strategy, shared values, goals, policies, procedures, and structures. Those are absolutely all part of your culture, definitely. And yet so much of what's actually driving what happens and what we do is what's going on beneath the water. And this is where we start to understand what's most authentic and true about a culture. So it's beliefs. What are the shared assumptions that people have about their culture? How do they perceive it? What do we have particular traditions or rituals that we act out within our culture? What are our norms for behavior? What are the values we have? We're certainly going to have unwritten rules because almost all cultures do. And then certainly we have some stories about successes and failures and things that happen. You might have stories about particular leaders or managers, other people within the organization. And then there at the very bottom of that iceberg, you see feelings that in organizations, whether people feel they can express them or not, they have feelings because they're human. So the way we really get things done is everything that's hidden, the more hidden organizational culture, the hidden norms. The observable norms are the ones above water. And sometimes we forget when we're looking at our culture that so much of what makes up our culture is what's actually beneath the water, what those hidden norms are. So we can start to understand our culture most authentically when we align the observable norms with the hidden norms. And we really consider both of them as equally important.